if you look at the right system, you're looking at the flexibility underneath that. Well, we know we need at least customer number, right? At a minimum. You need that. And I think that's in both systems, right? You need that. And that's how you're going to be able, that's a primary key. But then after that, we could say, okay, well, how much of the information do you have available do you want to bring into Acumatica?
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be joining from, and welcome to today's webinar. This is part of our joint series in which we invite many different friends. The goal of this series is to showcase many different solutions, capabilities, as they are announced in different enterprise software ecosystems, ERP. We have many different series that we are doing as part of our overarching webinar theme. So we have one product review in which we review different products. The second one is a slightly more methodology or the process. So we have some of those. The best way to get updated about these webinars is events and webinar page on elevateiq.com, or you can subscribe to our newsletter. On that note, we are going to start with quick intros of everybody. Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent vendor agnostic technology advisory firm. We help customers with any sort of technology strategy, change management, as well as system selection. On that note, Nirav, welcome.
Yeah. Hey, Sam. Happy to be here. My name is Nirav Shah. CEO, president of AdServe ERP. We are a gold certified Acumatica partner. And, we've been, implementing Acumatica for the last 4.5 years now. I personally have been in the ERP space for 25 years, and we see a big kind of tsunami or wave coming on the Shopify side. And we're happy to be here today and showcase our Acumatica to Shopify connector.
Okay, amazing. So this is going to be very exciting. Obviously, anybody who's going to be in the commerce community, they would appreciate this conversation. We are going to touch from many different lenses, different integration scenarios, challenges, stories. So we are going to have fun with that. Before we dig right into the session, if you are in the audience, if you have any sort of questions, comments, the best place to put them would be either chat or Q&A. We would love to see your experiences and see if you have if you are struggling with any similar challenges. On that note, Nirav, over to you whenever you are ready. You can share your screen.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, or if you have.
Let me go do that right now. Yeah. Absolutely. When you guys could see my screen here.
Right now, you are demoing me. I like it.
Definitely don't want to demo you. We do want to demo you, Sam, but we want to demo the product here. But just, I'll go ahead and get going, kick it off. Really appreciate you having us on here, Sam. Thank you so much again. And my name, like I said, Nirav Shah. I'm president of AdServe ERP. We're located out of Chicago, Illinois. A little bit outside Chicago, specifically, we're in Schaumburg. And today we're going to talk about the power of Shopify and the Acumatica integration. So connecting your storefront to your back office using Acumatica ERP Cloud here. And I won't PowerPoint everybody to death here. Essentially, I just want to share this and show the tight integration that we have between Acumatica and Shopify. And this is representing all the major entities that most customers that we see using this integration integrate with between both solutions. We have customers, right? Stock items, products, sales orders, whether they're B2C or B2B. Shopify has their Shopify Plus plan as well, so you can do B2B type of functionality on Shopify, so payment terms and things like that get also synced back into Acumatica. Inventory levels, so when you want to send inventory from your ERP to Shopify, that's also possible. Shipping and tracking information also gets synchronized properly as you would expect it to, so you don't have to manually put in tracking numbers, right, from your ERP back into Shopify. Payments, this is a big one. This is a big time saver for most customers that we see, is the ability to take payments on the Shopify platform, whether that's Shopify payments or another gateway, essentially, as long as that payment is confirmed and completed on the order, that payment is then sent to the appropriate sales order inside Acumatica. So all that data stays in sync. All the layers of the transaction kind of are linked together. So when you finally invoice that order, that payment is applied. And then we have customer pricing and discounts. A few other ones in here as well. There's refunds capabilities. There's also now a newer process that's coming out here is the ability to bring your draft Shopify orders into Acumatica as sales quotes. So that's a newer functionality that Acumatica is releasing. So there's a lot of things here. Acumatica specifically is updating this connector, bringing out new features every twice a year. So
Nirav, just one follow-up there question, I guess. I hope you don't mind. So draft order, if anybody might not be familiar with those, what would be a draft order? Do you want to clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's an order that that's on Shopify that's kind of still in process in terms of the type of items that you're selling, or type of items that customers buying, shipping and things like that. It's not fully committed into an order yet, meaning that you need to fulfill that, or payment is not taken yet. But it's just kind of that one kind of stage where you're kind of understanding what the customer wants before you convert it into an order.
So let's say if I want to draw the parallels here, right? So, I mean, some people might be thinking in their head is that you have quotes, which are going to be sort of the informal order. It's not committed yet. From the definition perspective, I guess that could be similar as well. So what's the difference between a quote and a draft order, I guess?
Yeah. So essentially, what Shopify does, it operates the same way. So draft order is you are trying to now maybe put a suggestion of something that you're proposing to buy. Essentially, the main difference between the draft and an actual sales quote, Acumatica, knowing it's a big full-blown ERP that's connected to their CRM. So with the quote, you actually have expiration dates and things like that. You're actually sending it maybe with the request for proposal directly back to your customer, and they're reviewing pricing, and you're going back and forth. With the Shopify, I think it's a little bit more in a informal manner, where you've basically kind of started an order, but you've not abandoned it, but you're going to come back and maybe fill it out at a later date.
Interesting. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the benefits that we see customers that have between Shopify and the Acumatica connector is the real-time synchronization. We see a lot of merchants out there, e-commerce merchants out there, where they're operating their orders, getting orders on Shopify, but then they're linking those orders to maybe QuickBooks, for example, and then their inventory and all that detail stored in like another system, let's say Finale or another system, or maybe even Excel potentially. And there's not that, true connection between, do we have enough inventory to fulfill these orders that are coming in from Shopify? Are we ordering enough to complete these orders that we're getting in from Shopify? So you could potentially run into your audience maybe seeing this, is that you're constantly out of orders. Maybe you carry too much inventory, or you don't know what you have, right? Ultimately. So the synchronization here keeps that in sync. You know what you have all the time. What you have is available to sell, or you could have triggers or flags in place saying that, put something on pre-order, or it's out of stock if you actually don't have it out of stock, right? When you have a source of truth, like Acumatica and ERP system, it could send that information to Shopify. So your customers are more aware on the Shopify side how, and what they could buy from you. Right. It could be scheduled or manual. Multi-store capabilities are there. So let's say if you operate, 3 different Shopify sites, right? And you take 3 different Shopify, orders from each site. Well, you could actually connect all 3 of those Shopify stores into Acumatica, along with a POS. Let's say you're a merchant that also has a retail store, right? Brick and mortar, where you have customers that come inside and you are operating Shopify POS. Well, the ability here with this connector is that you could bring those POS orders in as a separate order type. So you could clearly distinguish between e-commerce orders that come in from Shopify versus your POS orders that come in, right? POS, obviously, those type of orders basically are already fulfilled at the source of entry, meaning at the POS station. So those orders in Acumatica come in and basically get immediate fulfilled. So you don't have to go through the typical, process of fulfillment that you would do on a standard e-commerce order in your warehouse, where you have to go ahead and, generate a pick ticket, create a shipment, do a label, invoice or order, so on and so forth. A lot of that middle part is kind of already done when you have POS, and the connector supports that.
Okay.
Right. And there's no third party. So one of the biggest benefits here in the marketplace is that this is Acumatica's out of the box connector. They maintain it based on every release that they do. So essentially, you're not having to deal with third party, connectors out there. Good and bad, essentially, right? Obviously, being fully transparent. But the nice thing is that it follows the Acumatica upgrade pattern, and every single upgrade, there's new functionality coming out in the Shopify POS side.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to share these two slides with you to start priming and give you a framework of what we're going to go through today. Some of the, looking at the different entities and how they're linked together, and show you the software within Acumatica, and show us orders coming from Shopify to Acumatica.
So I have one comment or question there, I guess, and I don't know if you are going to cover that. So generally, like when you look at these connectors, they are great, obviously supported by OEMs. The point that you mentioned, that if that is going to follow the upgrade cycle from Acumatica, you have a lot of benefits there, right? But at the same time, the challenges that we have seen with similar add-on or plugin, or what were you using the name for it? Connector is the name that you're using, right? Connector.
Yeah.
So similar connectors, let's say if we look at some other ERP ecosystems, in our experience, it does not have all of those added transactions, as many detailed transactions. If your data model is going to be slightly different than the core assumption, generally, Acumatica, Shopify, if you do everything the way they are structured, then obviously that's much easier, right? But 90% of the customers, they are going to be all over the place, I guess, with their customer master, with their inventory master. So it could look very different. So I don't know if you are going to cover what are the limitations of this connector and what different options might be there for the customers?
Yeah, we'll definitely look into that. I'll show us some of the what setup options you have available when those situations arise. But here's what I say when I usually get that question is, customer information could be all over the place, right? And information data is a little bit disjointed. But I always come back to, well, what is the purpose of this type of integration? What is the purpose of having an ERP system, right, in place to be your single source of truth? The purpose really is to standardize. So if you have that data all over the place, and you're missing zip codes on some customers versus you're missing telephone numbers on some customers versus you're missing, let's say, states, or you have duplicate customers. Well, the idea is when you have a connector with business rules and logic in place, it starts to standardize that data over time. And it doesn't happen immediately, but it starts making a look at, well, how fragmented your processes are. And sometimes that's a steep learning curve. That is a hard pill to swallow for some customers, because now you have to go back and maybe update that data to bring that clean data back into for example, Acumatica correctly, and or change processes moving forward to ensure that that customer detail is fully completed, comprehensively, so you get that same information. Because ultimately, the data, when it comes back into the ERP, is there for you to analyze. Is to take that information and see how you could grow your business, how you could sell more to customers that buy certain things all the time with you, how to reactivate customers maybe that haven't bought from you, right? Which regions you should be selling in, things like that, right? All this information, but if it's organized correctly, right, and it comes over in a standardized way, that's the way you ultimately want to be. You don't want to keep that data fragmented, like if you are prior to doing and embarking on a project this way.
Yeah, so I'm going to have a follow-up scenario there so that listeners can follow along as well, I guess, Nirav. So the example that I'm mentioning, and this is a real-world, story. And when you talk about standardization, obviously everybody has their own versions of standardization, the way they like to think of, different things there, the way this should be done, right? Obviously, ERP Acumatica, Shopify, they all get along, but they don't get along, right? Sometimes they are going to have different versions of the story, the way Acumatica likes to see things versus how Shopify likes to see things. And customers are going to have their own versions in terms of how they structure their processes, right? So it's easier to say that, I mean, you can change your processes, but let's take an example. For example, some customers that we have seen, they just like to keep everything inside Shopify. They want to come to ERP only when that is going to be required, right? So that will be slightly more backend centric, system compared to the other case where obviously ERP community is going to argue that, you know what, as soon as you capture the order, you come to me. So you have the
Yeah.
central, architecture, you have everything. It looks good on paper, but then you are going to have constraints from the customer as well, because they are going to say, hey, I have my reps down here. They are looking at these orders. They need to look at the edit. So, just because you are able to send the orders, and that's where the connector conversation comes, because sometimes these connectors are going to send the order because it has written from the ERP perspective that ERP guys, hey, I can take that order, but but any edits are not going to be supported. So how do you structure the processes for these customers who are going to have sales reps who are let's say they are going through edit process, sometimes they are processing edit, sometimes they are doing return inside their Shopify instance as well, and all of that information need to flow through your ERP to be able to reconcile. But then obviously you need to have the right visibility as well from the inventory perspective as well as from the order perspective. So I don't know, I spoke a lot, but I mean, I'm giving you a taste of the scenario what we see in
Yeah.
our world. So I don't know what counter you are going to have there.
Yeah, so in some ways, right? Shopify, I think e-commerce in general could
Yeah.
feel like the Wild Wild West, right?
Yeah.
It's you could do a lot, and it's flexible. And a lot of these merchants at the they started with an idea, or they
Yep.
started small, and they just started adding Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid,
Yep.
and they understand their process in their head. But you grow big enough, you get to a certain $1 million mark, and now you're hiring people, and that what's in your head is hard to translate out, right? And standardize. So, oftentimes than not, you're absolutely right, right? You need to have the flexibility. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
that, should you only be one way or one-sided, where you could only do things the way Acumatica wants stuff, for example, or the only
Yeah.
pick up data the way Shopify wants to. I think there's a sweet spot. And what I
Yeah.
say by that is that there's some improvements that I think you need to look at, almost in every stage when you're doing an
Yeah.
implementation like this and integration into Shopify. But then if you look at the right system, you're looking at the flexibility underneath that. Well,
Yeah.
we know we need at least customer number, right?
Yeah.
At a minimum. You need that. And I think that's in both systems, right? You need that. And that's how you're going to be able to, that's a primary key. But then after that, we could say, okay, well, how much of the information do you have available do you want to bring into Acumatica? And then that's where I was going to go next here is in our commerce workspace here inside Acumatica, there's a lot of different ways to configure it. So your question is spot on, right? The connector is flexible enough for us to create certain import mapping, the way we want to map certain data between Shopify and Acumatica. So, and what I mean by that is when we go to entities here, these are all the entities that I kind of explained a little bit ago through my PowerPoint slide as soon as this comes up. But these are all the entities that we basically talk back and forth with on a handshake, right? With Shopify. Customer, location, stock items, product availability, price list, shipments, quotes, template items. And going to your question is we could go into one of these entities and really pick and choose, well, how do we want to map? Right? If we want to map something in a specific way, and we know that, we don't want to go ahead and, do it the way that is out of the box, but we want to add some filters, or we want to, add some sort of translation or substitution of values and things like that coming up. With the product itself, Acumatica, I think that's where it kind of separates itself really nicely between some other solutions, is the ability to go down to the level of specificity in how you want to map the data. You don't need to bring all that data in if you don't want to. If you know you want to keep some of that information in Shopify and that's not going to be importable into your ERP, nor do you want it to, well, you could keep that out. Or there's data that you want to bring in, but you need to translate that. But you're not going to translate that. Let's say you have 25,000 customers, you've been using Shopify for the last 5 years. You're not going to go back and clean that list. I think it's just impossible to do, right? So you may want to translate that data, for example, right?
Yeah.
And you could do that here. So when you come in and you start looking at, what are we improving, what are we cleaning, right? Those are all discussions that you'll have, saying that, this is what's possible, this is what we absolutely need to bring into the new system, and this is where we're a little bit more flexible. And then you kind of have to look at, well, is what we're bringing into the system, is that going to give you the most ROI, right? Is that going to help somebody do their job better when the order comes into Acumatica, or when they look up customer details in Acumatica, or they do X, Y, and Z. You kind of have to keep asking yourself that question as you're embarking on a project like this. That our data could be structured all this many ways, but if we don't want our customer service team to be in Shopify, they should really only be in Acumatica. Then we have to question, like, okay, then do we change our process in the way our data comes into Acumatica, right? Making sure that customers are fully cleaned up or not. But that's not a complete kind of necessity. We've seen customers where they say, look, we know our customer data is all over the place on the Shopify side, and we're not going to bring it in. We just want to bring in maybe all customers under a generic template, like a Shopify generic customer, right? And then we're keeping the customer details in Shopify, and we'll run all our reports out of there. So the flexibility is there in terms of the way you want to configure and set that up.
Yeah, perfect. I'll have more questions. I mean, unless you want to go on, you can go on, or I can keep asking questions.
No, absolutely. So I want to definitely go through kind of what this looks like from a day-to-day usage perspective when you look at this.
Yeah, perfect.
Right. And this is the connector right here. What we're seeing out of the box is all the different entities that we connect, customer location, companies, which is the B2B option here. You have stock items, non-stock items as well. Think of non-stock like gift cards and things like this that you sell on your Shopify site. That also gets synced. And you notice here the sync direction, bi-directional sync, export, import, right? You set this up the way you want to bring data back and forth at the end of the day, right? If you don't want to bring in something or don't want to activate something, you just keep it inactive, like I did here on the sales quotes. I'm not bringing in my sales quotes or my draft orders from Shopify. You decide what you want to turn on. You decide what you want to turn off, right? And as we go through here, product availability is another one, and product images. Now, what you're within Acumatica, and I'll show us a few additional screens here, is you could store your product images, which is obviously Shopify. You can't live on Shopify without product images. So you want to go ahead and you could keep Acumatica as your single source of truth. Keep all your images against your SKUs in Shopify and Acumatica, and then pass that information to Shopify and show that image automatically, right? So you're maintaining all your Shopify information as much as you can in one place, which could be your ERP in this case. Right? You have payments, right? Payments also get synchronized. This is a really nice feature. So when you do a payment on Shopify, a customer makes a payment. Well, that payment then will integrate into Acumatica against that order. So then it automatically goes ahead and gets applied to the order and applied to the invoice ultimately. Okay.
So a couple of questions there in terms of images, I guess, and these are the questions that customers are going to have as well. So how does this export work? And the other question that I'm going to have there is, for example, let's say, every customer is going to have different architecture, right? So let's say if they have a PIM in their architecture, and images have different requirements as well. So in your case, obviously you are saying that you can keep inside Acumatica, great, but all the features that you are going to get from the PIM perspective, for example, let's say if you're using some sort of caching feature, or some scenarios that we have seen in our customer base is that let's say if you update an image, you want to make sure that all channels are updated. So I don't know, in this architecture, is Acumatica connecting to all of different channels? Generally, what we have seen from the customer perspective is, if you are doing business on Amazon, Walmart, then they like to keep this inside Shopify because connectivity is much easier there. From the PIM perspective, connectivity is much easier. So what would you recommend, I guess, in your case?
Yeah. So Acumatica has a few out-of-the-box connectors. You have one, BigCommerce, Amazon, and Shopify. So if you created, kept your PIM inside Acumatica, it could push through with these other platforms. Recently we saw that there's a customer that was starting to use BigCommerce as their new e-commerce platform, and BigCommerce allows you to connect to Walmart, eBay, Amazon, right? All these other platforms. So the idea there is you kind of have to look at which platform has the most functionality. So for this particular customer, we said that, hey, you can still keep Acumatica as like your source of truth, bring all your items in there, create your images in there. And because they could also send that information to BigCommerce, and then BigCommerce will send it to the additional platforms that where Acumatica doesn't have the connection available.
Yeah.
So there's this, what I would say, this extended kind of channel connector chain that some customers don't realize, where a lot of these connectors have these ability to connect to different platforms at the end of the day. So we also did something just recently with Notion. So a customer wanted to keep all their PIM in Notion, for example, but then we connected Notion to Acumatica, and then it brought in the details of the pictures and all the other information of catalog and all that stuff for their business, which then shot it out to Shopify for them, right? So that's also an option. And these systems are pretty flexible from an API perspective, but you're exactly right. That's more and more of definitely a request nowadays.
Interesting. So how does export work here? So export is going to be, this is exporting all of these images inside those platforms, or how does that work? Is it like auto export or auto export?
Okay, yep, auto export. Yeah, exactly. Auto export, and it could export them out as soon as the image, the product is exported out, the stock item. It exports also the product image and product availability at the same time, if that's available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice.
Exactly. And then kind of going in, just show you a little bit about the store connection itself is you have a lot of different flexibility, right? And how you want to bring in the orders and the type of orders that you bring in and what the automation is for when you bring those orders in. So you can link, like I said, one or many stores together here in this in the connector. But if I go into the connector setup here, you'll notice I've connected here. I can test my connection. It's going to find my connection into Shopify and make sure I have a valid connection over here. So it says operation complete. Anytime you see a green check mark in Acumatica, that means it's good to go. These are all the entities that I've kind of activated. We saw that I did not activate the sales quotes. Fine. But here are some of your questions that you are asking about, Sam. So here, when you create customers, you can apply templates to customers. Because remember, an ERP needs more than just an address to transact with the customer, right? There's some financial codes associated with the customer. There's probably payment terms. There's ship vias, shipping terms, right? All sorts of things you could imagine. So you could define a specific class or template to apply to that customer, so that customer gets all those default fields. Okay.
So. Yeah, so here's my question to you. So obviously, I mean, from the ERP perspective, you are going to have all of those details, but those details are not always available in the e-commerce space. If you look at the pure play e-commerce, I mean, you don't even know. The only thing you have from the customer perspective is probably their email. In B2B transactions, I get it that you're going to have a lot more details because you are transacting with businesses. But technically, e-commerce is supposed to be very consumer centric, right? So you're not even going to have all of those details. So how would you acquire those details, I guess, for those customers and transactions?
Yeah, so what I would say is that there's two different type of customers on Shopify, for example. What you have those customers that are registered with Shopify, and then you have those customers that are guests that are never going to give you the information, right? They're saying, we're doing a guest checkout, and we're going to go ahead and anonymously just give you my email address, and then I'm going to go ahead and order from you. So Acumatica provides additional functionality around that, saying that if it's a registered customer and they register with you, where they put some more details around their address and things like that, they have a location. Well, the system will go and apply this particular customer class to them because they're registered, right? Versus a generic guest customer will go under maybe a generic Shopify customer in Acumatica with some generic settings against them. So you could then distinguish pretty quickly, right, which customer orders you have all the information for versus which orders you're applying kind of, information for, customers that are going under your Shopify generic customer, because they're going to be more guest type customers at the end of the day. And then also, if you want to create those guest accounts as unique accounts in Acumatica, you could do that, and the system will just apply basically generic codes, like the next customer number available in whatever information it has for you to add that customer. But the thing is that you will get some sort of validation at the time of shipping, right? If, let's say, usually on Shopify, you always get the shipping address. Otherwise, it's not a complete order on Shopify. So you at least get that. But as long as you get an email address and you have some sort of name where the shipment is going to go to, that order is going to flow just fine through the ERP. And with this, particular template for this guest generic customer, it'll have the financial codes to apply to it when the order comes in to kind of get it out the door through the system seamlessly.
Nice.
So it's kind of accounting for that. You could also then map your payment terms here. This is really good for B2B customers, and you could import company contacts as customers too. So you could have, let's say on the B2B side, let's take a big customer like let's take Grainger, for example, right? Grainger has so many different locations. They have so many locations that that are actually buying locations. So they could be actual companies inside Shopify, individual companies at the end of the day, or individual customers under a main company in Shopify. But then when you import that particular relationship into Acumatica, you import it in, you can just say, I want one main company, which is Grainger, and all the other customers are imported as contacts. You don't end up with, let's say 55 different Grainger accounts, customers in your ERP. It's just one main one, and everyone else is just like a contact, right? But any one of those customer locations under that company in Shopify could make an order in Shopify and wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of moving on here, going through the tabs. Inventory is an important one, and I'm gonna change this one setting over here. But this one, for example, warehouse mode and inventory, this allows you to start telling the system for your stock items, how are you going to export tags, right? You could have tags against there, again, keeping the ERP, the system of record. Go ahead and send your product tags across to Shopify. Default visibility, do you want to show everything like visible in terms of products that are in Acumatica to Shopify? You could control, go back up here. You could control the default availability, and this is also updated and respected at the stock item level as well. So at the stock item level, you could say, for certain items you don't want to update, you don't want to set as available, but other items you do, right? And you could go ahead and manage, what items you show inventory for across showing on the Shopify side. Okay.
So one question there, if you don't mind. So product tags, if that might not be applicable in every industry, and I don't know where they are used and what are the implications, I guess, from Shopify perspective. So maybe talk about product tags a little bit and how that is mapped to Acumatica inventory.
Yeah, you're talking about product
tags.
Product tag. Yeah. So let me just shift over here. I'm gonna go to inventory. I'm gonna go to a stock item. Let me just show it here. Let's go to a stock item.
Yeah.
And I'll go look for a specific item here. Let this open up.
Okay.
Here. Let's say I'm doing my Acer laptop, for example, right? Actually, let me do one of these guys here. Let me do Lola. Sorry, let me take another item here. Let's do this Lola pullover. I'm gonna go to this item, and on this item, let this open up here. Okay, we have under the stock item, this is the item master. We have an e-commerce section here. So here you could put all your tags, right? You could put sales categories, which would be your category tags here. Media URLs, you could add those here. You could put a custom search engine optimization that you want to send over to Shopify. You could add all this information here, kind of keeping that single source of truth, and send that over to Shopify.
Interesting. So you are bringing all of that marketing information here, I guess, inside this one. And you have seen some customers, generally they have just two systems in their architecture or multiple, because if they have multiple, then there might be some issues, right? Because they want to keep the single source of truth, at least from the marketing data perspective, inside marketing systems, as opposed to keeping them inside ERP, right?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that, but I think the gap on that is closing a little more and more, and I'll share why. Is because on this next release, on 26R1, Acumatica is coming out with an AI assistant that could write all your marketing text for your stock items right within the system. So
interesting.
So it could go and write that based on some prompts that you put in for your items or catalogs, and we'll go ahead and write this text for you automatically, and then you could update it as you like, and then send this across.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's coming out. I think general availability of 26R1 is going to be here in a few days.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about AI, I'm probably going to have 5 different questions there on AI as well, but I don't want to hijack your agenda.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about on the AI side, right? But
Yeah,
yeah, so this is, a one-stop place. So you're doing the synchronization of
yeah,
any data that you put in here against a stock item that will go and update on the Shopify side. Okay. Going back to our Shopify store and kind of what I want to mention here and round out some of the setup pieces of this is as I go into inventory and I'm looking at, how do I want to share my availability mode, what's available, or do I want to share what's available to ship? Now, that's
yeah,
a really important concept. And most ERPs kind of struggle with that, right?
yeah,
What's available versus what's available to ship and what's on hand. So
yeah,
in Acumatica, there is a function. I'm just going to, there's available to, so if we look at here, availability calculation rules. You could define in Acumatica based on, you could create your own different types, but what are you going to consider available at the
yeah,
end of the day? Based on these different transaction types, you could flag on or off what you want to include or not include in the availability calculation. Most ERPs, you don't have a choice. You have to take what's written out of the box. But in this case, you could decide which type of records or transactions you want to include in the availability calculation, which then will
okay,
impact on the total quantity that's available to sell on your Shopify site. Okay.
nice.
So coming back here to Shopify, let's go back into our Shopify store and continuing on. Another nice feature is you could have multiple warehouses,
Yeah,
right? That you operate in, that you sell out of. You could show inventory for all warehouses to Shopify, fine, right? Or you could tell the system there's only going to be specific warehouses. So in the specific warehouses side, you could tell the system that it's going to be my main warehouse, and that's going to be, I can do a specific location. I'll kind of explain what that is here real quick. So I could tell the system that there's only specific warehouses that I want to show or grab inventory from and share that with Shopify, okay, at the warehouse level. Or I could go deeper and tell the system there's only specific locations, meaning bins within the warehouse that I want to share inventory for. Let's say there's a return bin or there's
yeah,
a quarantine bin in your warehouse and you don't want to show that inventory as available in Shopify. Well, you could exclude that location from this list and it will exclude the inventory from those bins showing up on your Shopify site. So it gets very granular in terms of the inventory that you want to then show on Shopify. So that inventory is always looking accurate to your customer. They're not feeling, or you're not, showing them inventory that's not available at that. Okay. Moving on here, orders. We talked a little bit about this, but a lot of different ways to configure your new orders coming into Shopify. You have different order types for e-commerce orders, for your returns coming in from Shopify, right? That's a big amount. There has to be a clean handshake when it comes to a return. A lot of customers, this is a tough process for them, right? When they're dealing with returns at the end of the day. And with the connector that has already return functionality included in it, it hands it pretty seamlessly for us. Also return amount, return reason codes, line discounts, what a gift card item is, a non-stock item, importing POS orders, right? And here's another thing here, and this is where we map some of the warehouses that we talked about, is taxes.
yeah,
Taxes is always difficult for most merchants, right?
yeah,
And Shopify makes it easy because they have a out of the box tax solution that you
yeah,
could activate and start using, right? I think they charge a little bit for that, but you could activate and start using. And once you do that, you could actually bring in the tax as it's calculated in Shopify into Acumatica. So you don't have to worry about, Acumatica recalculating tax and that tax being different between two systems. Okay. We have substitution lists, and that was kind of nice. I explained that a little bit earlier. And then we have POS orders, ship POS orders, and sales quote orders, right? And how you want to bring those in. Payments, right? You go ahead and link your payments. All the different type of payments you take inside Shopify could be linked to specific payment methods inside Acumatica, along with which cash account. So when that payment is taken, it goes in the correct undeposited funds account for you for reconciliation purposes when that order comes in. and that order fees, for example, down here, you see we have a Shopify fee, payment fee also gets dispersed accordingly against that particular payment method. Okay. And then on the shipping side, right, on the shipping side, you have all your shipping zones in Shopify, and then you could go ahead and bring those zones and map them to particular ship vias inside Acumatica, so those proper shipping codes get associated to the orders, and ultimately, those are available to ship to the customer, right? You could print your label and so on. All right, so that's real quick about the connector here, and you'll notice that the connector does a lot here. It is the framework. The next thing I want to show is like the sync history, and this is a good way to kind of analyze what's going on with my data, right? What are we syncing? Are there any errors? Are there any failures? How do I troubleshoot it? If you're in charge and responsible for the sync integration, we have a dashboard. If we look at this dashboard, for example, you log into Acumatica first thing in the morning, and you'll see this dashboard come up, and it'll tell you everything that's happened from the night before, right? We'll give you a bird's eye view of any records that got aborted, any failed records, preparing for processing, total processed, right? So on and so forth. What's your volume of orders that are kind of coming through the system here? Top products, right? Processed entities here. So it kind of gives you a good idea, like, hey, where is maybe a certain area that I need to concentrate on, and ask my team that, hey, something's going on, or you need to check the connector.
Yeah.
Right. Now, looking at the sync history, you get a little bit more detail here on the sync history side on exactly what's been transpiring. So if I look at all records here, it's going to tell us, what's been trying to synchronize here, what's been processed, if anything's failed, what is the ERP order number, what is the Shopify order number, right? And it keeps everything connected, so you have clear visibility and understanding of what's trying to come into Acumatica or what's trying to leave Acumatica to Shopify, and what's the status of that, and when did that happen at the end of the day.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So that's about the setup, and the setup is super easy and super simple. Now I kind of want to show a little bit of an actual order kind of coming in between Shopify and Acumatica. So what I'll do is I'm going to go into my Shopify site. Now it doesn't look very pretty at the end of the day, like some merchants. This is the back end of it, but I'm just going to go ahead and create an order for myself. I'm going to go ahead and select the product. Let's say I do Lola here, and you notice the availability is coming directly from Acumatica for me. I also have my image that's coming in from Acumatica and my product. And in this case, you notice that this is a variant actually that's in Shopify that I'm selecting. So that's fully supported between the connector. So if you use variants on your Shopify side, no need to worry. That is supported, and that those products will come over into Acumatica accordingly. So we'll go ahead and search for the item. Let's say we order 2 of these items, right? I'll go ahead and select myself as a customer. Okay, say I select myself as a customer. I'm going to ship it to myself here. I'm going to go ahead and add my delivery method. Let's say I'm going to do free delivery. I could do standard delivery. Okay, I don't have taxes turned down, but taxes would be calculated here if I did. I could do pay later. I'll go ahead and pay now actually instead. I'm super eager to get these products in my hands. So I'm going to go ahead and order this right now, and put my order. I'm going to authorize. I'm going to go and authorize this order, and you'll notice it's going to go from draft status and actually become an order now. This is order 1091. And if we just look at this Shopify order, it tells us what we ordered, okay, the quantity of what we ordered, and the shipping that we put in there, and what we paid, right? Yep. So right now I just authorize this, but I'll go ahead and capture the payment, right? I could say accept, and that's going to be captured at the end of the day, right? So we paid $540.99. We have the address here, and what you'll see is that through Shopify, you'll get a breadcrumb trail of what's happening within the order, right? And that's pretty standard logic. So what should happen now, as this order is kind of going through the cloud universe, going through the Acumatica cloud connector here, pretty soon, if I just go look at this is order 1091, and I go into Acumatica, and I go into sales orders. So I go into sales orders, we should see this order pop up here. So give it a quick minute. Get to the sales order entry screen. Okay, so we got sales order. We got sales order. That's order 1090. So it's probably still going through. Let's give it a minute. So it's going to go through here. We'll go ahead and run it. Should come through 1090. Let me go into the connector. Let's take a look at this order. I'm going to go into, actually, we're seeing history. Did that come over yet? Nope, I don't see it coming over here yet. Let me go and force it. Actually, I did see something over here. Let me come back in here. So there's our order, 1091. It did get processed and it did get prepared. So we see that in our connector sync, right? So let me go back into our sales order list. So we should see it there. We probably just missed it as it was coming in. So there's our order 1091.
Yeah.
Okay. Automatically sync to Acumatica with our order type, which is our e-commerce order. And we'll see the exact details that got kind of, left on the Acumatica or the Shopify side come into Acumatica. So we have our order, quantity, our freight, and what's being ordered here from the customer perspective. Okay. So now there's going to be a multiple number of steps here that some customers may do. They may have a bulk of these orders. They're going to go ahead and maybe batch pick these orders, or they're going to go ahead and try to create pick lists, separate out those pick lists out to the warehouse floor. They'll go pick these items, right, and bring them back and create the shipments and go through that route. So what I'll do in this order, just in the interest of our webinar here, we know we have this order and we need to go ahead and process it. So with order, Acumatica order number 113, I'm going to go and select create shipment, which is the queue to get this into the warehouse team's hand to start fulfilling this order essentially and picking it, packing it, and shipping it. So I'll go ahead and create the shipment. All right, shipment's being created, and now we're going to get into the shipment itself. So let's go into our shipments here. There's our shipment, and here's our shipment record.
Yeah.
So this is the system is telling us that we need to go and ship this out, right? So if I wanted to go ahead and print, let's say, a pick list, I could go and print a pick list. We can see how this looks directly from here and start picking it. And you notice most merchants right now are probably doing a lot of this in Shopify. So they have their warehouse team in Shopify queuing these orders up and going through the shipping process. With the ERP now, with Acumatica, you're keeping all your backend operations completely separate, more intended the way they need to operate in a more structured manner to go through particular shipment warehouse screens to go ahead and begin the shipping and packing process.
Yeah.
Right. So here, I could see what I need to ship. If I want to now advanced, go ahead and print a packing slip. I could go and do that. Print a packing slip if I like. See, here's our packing slip at the end of the day, and go ahead and start packing it and putting it into a box. Right. I need to check one thing here. I'm going to go to files. I want to make sure I could generate a label for our order. So I'm just going to go into files here, and I'm going to search one file name. Okay, I need to just delete these files. I created these labels earlier because I have a test shipping account, and I don't want to go back into my order here, my shipment. I don't want us to reuse that same test label, so we'll create a new test label on the demo today. So here I'm going to come into my shipment. I'm going to go in my shipping tab, and I'm going to go shop for rates. But before I do that, let me put it in a box. What am I going to box this in? Now, this could be automated as well. I'll put a small box. I'll do 0.2 kilograms, and I'll go to my shipping. I'll shop for rates. And as I shop for rates, it's going to go and look at what rates are available for me to ship this box out in. So here I have a couple. Again, I don't have a UPS account, as you can imagine. I have a test account here, so I have UPS ground. I'll go and use that. I'll hit OK. And it's going to go bring in my cost for me. This is what we call Acumatica shipping integration here within the system. So it allows us to go ahead and get real-time rates with your accounts. Most likely the same rates that you would get on the Shopify side, right? Here, as long as you're using your account numbers. And then we'll also you have some additional options here to skip address validation, use customer's account if you wanted to, right? You're shipping it, you want to do a Saturday delivery, additional handling. It'll go and add those additional costs in as you're selecting on a shipment by shipment basis. But if I'm ready to ship this, I got my package, I'm going to go ahead and confirm shipment. It's going to go and now go get the label, grab the label for me. And then once I do that, I'm going to see that shipment's going to be confirmed on the Shopify side. So let this go through. So we'll see here, it went ahead and completed. If I open up this connection here, little pin here attachment, it's going to have my return label and my actual label, which will generally automatically print right here off of your Zebra printer, right? So here's our label. And then you also have a return label. For e-commerce merchants, this is really important to also have a return label most of the time, so they could, put this in the box in case there's a return that happens. Okay. Now at this point, I could go and prepare my invoice if I want, right? And just tell the system, yeah, this invoice. And now that invoice will have the payment applied for it and everything's closed. What I'm going to do now is go back into Shopify once this runs, and I'll show you that particular order itself.
Yeah.
So this is complete here. So now we've invoiced that order. And one thing I want to mention, anywhere there's in Acumatica, there's a green button or highlight, all of that could be automated. Anywhere you see a green option or a function or action that you could do could be automated using Acumatica's business scenarios functionality easily. What's basically low code, no code type of functionality that you're having here, without getting a programmer or somebody else involved. Now, if I go into here, let me go into our order here. Let me just refresh our order. And let me go back and send it. Let me go back, look at my connector here. Let's go to prepare data. Let me send my shipping details, shipment information here. I'm going to select my shipment. I may have just had this one running on a different interval. I'm just going to take a look, but you could have this run on real time as well if you like. And now if I go into my commerce and I go to sync history, we should see a shipment here is prepared. Let me go and sync that shipment that just came in. 98. And as soon as I run this, again, I can run manually, or I could have this on an automation schedule. As soon as that's done running, we'll see the fulfillment status back on the Shopify side. So that's complete. It's processed. If I come in here, you see that order on Shopify is fulfilled and it's passed the tracking number information. And you'll notice here on the Shopify order history side, it's giving you kind of an identifier when Acumatica is talking back to the order, right? Which is an important point here, because if somebody on the Shopify side wants to see what's happening to this order, they'll be able to see that Acumatica has communicated, and here's the latest status of that order.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of nice kind of integration points between both of these solutions. And now coming back into Acumatica, and you go into that order, for example, we'll see all that information tied together. You see that order status of that sales order is now complete, 113. And then along with that, you'll have all the order history. You'll see this is the Shopify order number over here. You'll notice that if we go to shipments, here's the shipment information that got updated. If I go into financial over here, let's go back into, if I go to payments, here's a payment that came in from Shopify. So it keeps all of that information in sync for you. So you don't have to bounce around in two different places. Right. So.
Yep.
So yeah, so I think that kind of takes me through what I wanted to share on the Shopify Acumatica connector. It's very robust. It has a lot of nice detail to it. They're adding more functionality to this every twice a year, essentially at the end of the day. And Amazon's no different in terms of what Acumatica does on the Amazon side. It does settlement reports, it does payments, it creates your invoices automatically, and keeps track of your inventory. Obviously, with Amazon, you don't know where your inventory is sitting in the Amazon network, but electronically, you'll at least know how much you have in total with Amazon automatically using the Amazon connector.
So talk about maybe some of the capabilities that they have introduced recently, what was not there, what is coming maybe on the roadmap, what may not be there. I don't know if you're able to share any insights there.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the commerce side, if I go back to our connector, something that just recently got released is the ability to move draft orders as sales quotes into Acumatica. That was not there before. So that just came out on the latest release, which was really nice. Another function that is coming out is Acumatica Payments. I believe is going to be available to use on the Shopify side. So Acumatica Payments is Acumatica's kind of payment processor gateway. And a lot of customers have been asking about that. So you could go ahead and do refunds back and forth. So if you took a payment in Shopify, it will automatically go Acumatica will go automatically update the order in Shopify. And that functionality is coming out here in this release as well. So, that's something that they've been asking for. So now you can do payments on both sides of the transactions, on both systems, and keep everything in sync.
So let's talk about the politics there, I guess. I mean, Shopify is going to have its own payments. I think that's their bread and butter, I guess. I mean, they subsidize the subscription cost substantially so that merchants can use their payments, right? Now,
Yeah.
Acumatica is releasing their own payment. So how is the politics going to work, I guess? I mean, who wins in this game? Talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's based on customer size. I
Yeah,
don't see a bigger customer using Acumatica payments as much.
yeah,
On the Shopify side, I think that's where Shopify payments really fits in really well.
yeah,
Versus maybe a smaller customer that has a limited presence on the e-commerce side, right? And they do, maybe a handful of orders or a dozen orders so a week or something like that, where it doesn't justify setting up Shopify payments because they're already using Acumatica payments at the end of the day. So that's kind of where I see the play here is
yeah,
the fit right now, unless that kind of is different. But I don't think
yeah.
it's going to be like a full blown take over Shopify payments. I don't think that's the idea there.
Yeah, yeah, it's always tricky with these things, right? I mean, from the customer's perspective, if you really think about it, I mean, you just have too many options, too much overlap, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's very hard to decide, okay, which one to go for.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think people get lost in the fees and
Yeah,
what the fees are. And you have a fee per charge, and then you have a
yeah,
fee, and then you have a particular dollar amount, or like 49
yeah,
cents or something they charge you per transaction as well. So
yeah.
it's a cutthroat game when it comes to payment processing. That's for sure.
So let me ask you this question. So obviously, look, the connector that you have shown is very robust. There's no question there. I don't think we have seen any, and obviously we do a lot of selections, as you know. I mean, we go through a lot of different cycles and we are looking at pretty much everybody's capabilities in the market. And I don't think what we have seen in the market is as robust as what you have shown. Generally, they'll have like the basic mappings, and like edits are not there. And then once you want to do that, then obviously you need to have some sort of high pass in between.
Yeah.
Generally that is the case. So here obviously this is very comprehensive. In your experience, does this work in the majority of the scenarios? Are there any restrictions, constraints that you have seen? Anything that maybe on Acumatica's roadmap, known limitations that they might be working on? Are you able to share anything there?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The biggest kind of hurdle I see with
Yeah,
the connector itself is how good the underlying data is,
yeah,
right? Because there's no rhyme or reason. Customers do a lot of different things. They maintain
yeah,
their data a lot of different ways when it comes to Shopify and different e-commerce sites. And the expectation is that Acumatica should be able to have a solution for each one of those. And that's where it becomes a little tricky, right? That's where partners like us jump in and intervene and say, hey, these are best practices. This is the way maybe you ought to do it or might think about doing it. But ultimately, it comes down to what's best for the customer, right? And I think the
yeah,
flexibility of this connector helps with that. That we could bring data in a lot of different ways, adding filters or different type of validations using the out of the box connector.
yeah,
Ultimately, so that's nice. But I've also seen, is this a replacement for what maybe a Celigo could do? Right. Sometimes we
yeah,
get that question, like, hey,
yeah,
do we need Celigo now? And I would say, it depends, right? If you're mapping and translating data, if it's this, it should be this, right? Or
yeah,
if it's this customer, then actually should be this customer. That's where a Celigo type product is probably a little bit more better because you're doing that and you already have those connections and set up because that's a lot more flexible at the end of the
yeah,
day. I would say if you're a customer that's sitting kind of more out of the box with Shopify, there's
yeah,
not a lot of nuances in the way you manage your data in Shopify. I think the connector here is great. It's a great addition for you if you're looking at an ERP and want to bring your Shopify orders in. But if there's a
yeah,
lot of different variables in your Shopify data and the way you bring that in and then transact that data, I think a better space for that could be maybe a Celigo, right? But I think it all comes down to really the conversations you have with your partner and saying, well, is this the right approach for me? Maybe business has changed
yeah.
since you've kind of implemented Celigo and the way things are happening. Now you've standardized a little bit more, and maybe you don't need that. So there's a lot of variables there.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, there are always a lot of variables. So, in your recent experience, I mean, the deals that you have done, maybe the projects that you have done, anytime, have you run into any specific constraints? Obviously, data is there, but maybe talk about the specific constraints, the customer master, the way it was structured. Obviously, you talk about best practices, right? So, talk about those specific instances where the customer master would not work with the connector, and then maybe you had to go to Saligo, or maybe you had to change some sort of processes. Do you have any examples by any chance there that you might be able to share?
Yeah, like let's say if you downloaded an app on Shopify
Yeah.
and that was there to add additional functionality on the customer, for
Yeah.
example, now you actually have a customer number on Shopify, for example. right? And now you want to bring that same customer number into Acumatica. Well, that becomes a little bit of a challenge. So then we have to kind of work out how we're going to bring that information in. We mainly see that when there's apps downloaded on Shopify side that don't play nice with the connector, right? The connector is not there. It's not going to basically work with every single app out there, right? Bundles is another one, for example. Acumatica does have a connection to the out of the box Shopify bundling app that they have, right? But there's a lot of bundling apps out there, right? There's a lot of down payment apps that are out there. So it's not going to, because if they're using that, exclusively, and they've inherently, it's different logic than what Acumatica has or Shopify has in terms of how the orders will come in, then, we kind of have to look at, well, will this connector work for that? How different, is the use cases here that this connector is going to be able to fit? What is the fit percentage here? Or should we go to a Celigo, essentially, that gives you a little bit more flexibility there? Like, for example, Shopify, you could also get orders from different platforms, right? Let's say if you go to, you sell on Simon's Plus, or you sell on a different platform, and then they send orders that they take through Shopify, but let's say they don't give you a customer. The customer comes in as a tag. Well, that doesn't really help at the end of the day, right? A Celigo type product is good because it could take that tag and add a customer to it and go ahead and bring that into an order. So yes, there's things like that that's going to happen all the time just because of the nature of e-commerce and a lot of flexibility that they need to do to operate in that space.
So great points. And obviously, Nirav, you know a lot. You do a lot of work in this space. It's very clear that you are very knowledgeable. So we are grateful that you could share your insights today. Hopefully, the listeners could learn, something out of it. Hopefully, they can do good business, I guess, on the e-commerce portals. And obviously, if they are looking for any sort of help, they can reach out to Nirav, So Nirav, if they want to get hold of you, I don't know if you're going to have any sort of resources, closing thoughts, maybe share those. You're coming close to our time now, so we need to wrap.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. We love doing this. Customers don't really know what they don't know. And integrations like this are high productivity boosters in our eyes, to really help the customers, get the most out of their back end processes. As they're building their front end, to get a hold of me, LinkedIn is usually the best way. I'm on there. I'm often on there. Nirav.h.shah. The company's Cirrus ERP. We work with Sam all the time. So happy to help field questions and continue, answering questions that anybody may have.
Okay, perfect. So once again, thank you so much. And we should probably keep doing this. We are probably going to invite you again for many more webinars. Hopefully, I think you do a lot more work in several other spaces too. So maybe you can share that. So once again, thank you so much for doing this. That's it for today. And listeners, if you joined for the first time, the best way to be updated about these webinars is events and webinar page on elevateiq.com, or you can subscribe to our newsletter. That's where we announce a lot of them. We have several of them coming in the next few weeks. So I'll see you in the next webinar.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.